All right, guys, I am back with a brand new Monday morning DC update. I took Sunday off and did not have a chance to do my DC update on Saturday, so I do have quite a few things to show you here this morning. And last night was the Golden Globes, and one big DC star made a huge admission about Warner Brothers and one of the films that was made. Now, it's not a DC film, but it goes to show you how Warner Brothers operates. And we're going to talk about how bad off Warner Brothers is at the end of this video and what this actress actually said. And it was pretty crazy that she admitted this on live TV. It just shows you just how Hollywood operates, and it's just some crazy stuff. But let's jump in to the photos. So first up here, we have Sterling K. Brown says he would be excited to play Jon Stewart in the DCU. Maybe I have to give somebody a call. He would make a good Jon Stewart, I think. I'm a fan of his. I think he would do a great job. We already had somebody as Jon Stewart, so I'm not sure why we would need to cast anybody else. But, hey, they're trying to move away from everything, even stuff that hasn't been seen, so they're going to go in a completely different direction. Now, this here is very eye-opening. Somebody said, I'm kind of curious. For things like Matt's DCU Arkham show, do you have any sort of mandate or embargo against using certain characters? I will clarify this question by saying I don't mean they would appear, but like if Matt and the Arkham team really want to use Harley, Batman, Joker, Riddler, or any other A-list character because it serves their story, do they have that freedom? In previous administrations, they didn't really have it. James Gunn came out and said, and this is pretty definitive, Peter and I, meaning Peter Safran, and I are the curators of DC characters. That means any characters writers want to use in media of any type, that's not comic books, and a couple of other things like I believe podcasts, DCU or not, has to go through us. And then he hashtagged DCU. So James Gunn is laying down the law there, guys. This is why I don't like him in charge of these characters. And I've already talked about many times why I don't want him in charge. And if you don't know, you need to go back and watch my other videos. This is crazy that they are 100% in charge of everything. And this tells you that in an effort to have something like Zack Snyder's Justice League move over to Netflix or to Amazon, it's got to go through James Gunn and Peter Safran. That they're the ones in charge of everything. So if we never see the Ayer cut, or we never get a continuation of Zack Snyder's Justice League story, it is specifically because of James Gunn and Peter Safran. They are the ones 100% in charge. He's admitting it right here. He is DC, and that is very unfortunate. Now, I think I've talked about this in the past, but we all know in Zack Snyder's Justice League there was a conversation between Batman and the Joker. And this, I believe I talked about this a long, long time ago, but it said this scene exists because Zack Snyder thought it would be disrespectful if the DCU's Batman and Joker never had an on-screen interaction together. Snyder had more respect and care for DC than Warner suckers. And they are absolutely right. Jason Winter is absolutely right with this. What's crazy is, the Birds of Prey movie, which was the emancipation of Harley Quinn, there was no Joker in that movie, which is ridiculous. How you could not have them together in that movie is insane. Now, there was plenty of time with Joker and Harley together in David Ayer's Suicide Squad, but that has yet to be seen. And I thought this scene was absolutely amazing. It was eerie. Their dialogue together was really well done, and they filmed their scenes separately. And when you know that and you actually see that scene, that's some incredible acting right there. Both those guys really brought it. That is the best Joker-Batman interaction that has ever been filmed. Now, as you know, in my last DC video, David Ayer came out and said, I am done with DC. Now, he also followed this up with still a DC fan, always and forever. So he is always going to love DC. He's not going to turn away from it just because of what's happened. But, we're going to talk about something that happened this weekend here in a few minutes. I don't know if I grabbed stills of it. If I didn't, I'll talk about it at the end when I talk about Warner Brothers. Now, this is absolutely true. I'm learning more about the investors with these companies, and it's especially with Walt Disney right now, and it is moving into Warner Brothers. It's this account, Cinehouse wrote, if you didn't know, a lot of investors and executives that invest and work in Warner Brothers Pictures also invest and work with people at Disney. This is the real reason directors like Zack Snyder and David Ayer were pushed out. It's because Disney and Warner share the same agenda for their movies. And it's true. When you start digging into who these investors are, they fundamentally want to change society through agendas. I actually have seen video where these investors talk about this, and they talk about how they will push their agenda, for better or worse, through media, through movies and TV shows. And that's exactly what we are seeing happening here. And this is why these companies don't care that they are losing money as long as they push an agenda. Now, this is very eye-opening, too. It says John Logan, the writer of Gladiator, The Aviator, Hugo, Skyfall, is no longer attached to write Batman, the Brave and the Bold. Now, this was breaking news that came out just as the weekend started, and James Gunn came out and said it's kind of hard to fire somebody who was never hired in the first place. So he's going that route again, saying that this individual was never involved, kind of like Henry Cavill was never going to be Superman again, yet the studio told him to come out and announce his return. This is the way James Gunn operates. I can all but guarantee this guy was attached to this, but things fell through, and so James Gunn is saying he was never attached to it to begin with. So more people are dropping out of the DCU. So here's some more of what happened with David Ayer. First of all, let's talk about the first part of this, because this was the second part of it. The first part of what David Ayer had posted was he doesn't like the hatred that is being thrown towards James Gunn, that it's unwarranted, and that he has the hardest job in Hollywood. And he backed that up and said the people going after him are just awful, basically. And the comments in there, people started to pile up on David Ayer, and he had to delete that specific tweet. And you guys all know I am very anti-gun, and I told him I don't hate James Gunn. Hate is a very strong word. There's very little that I actually hate, and I definitely don't hate people. I said with James Gunn, though, I don't believe he's the right guy to be in charge of DC, and I have my reasons, and we'll continue to talk about those reasons. So somebody came out, Bat Dan came out and said, now can I ask you how you feel about the excessive hatred Zack Snyder has received? Because he didn't talk about any of that. David Ayer said it's awful. He's good people, super positive. Throwing hate at people and being scary to them is bad. Can't say it more basically. So he's basically saying, yes, it's both. He's just specifically talking about Gunn. But again, he had to delete those comments and had to move on because of the amount of people that dislike James Gunn. And it goes to show you that way more people dislike James Gunn than the other way around, which is pretty crazy. Now, this is a story that started to float around that I thought was hilarious, and you should have seen some of the responses that came out of this. Somebody asked James Gunn, is Legacy going to have practical effects or VFX, or mostly just VFX? James Gunn came out and said Legacy is only practical effects. What? Corenswet can fly? Yeah, you should have seen the comments on this. It was comedy gold. And there are some crazy people out there actually believe that he can fly. Talk about some weird, bizarre crap. Superman Legacy will only use practical effects. Now, James Gunn obviously is not truthful on this. They're going to have to use VFX. They can't have Superman fly using practical effects only, unless they're going to put him in front of a green screen for everything and there's no VFX. Unless you could consider that VFX at that stage because you're adding the background. I don't know how they're going to pull this off. I would love to see mostly practical VFX. That's one thing that made the original Superman still holds up to this day is, the scene where he goes up and Christopher Reeve, picks up that helicopter and Lane is falling down the side of the building is still amazing to this day to pull off a scene like that. It is so well done. A lot of his landing and taking off was all practical effects, and it would be cool if they did that in Superman Legacy. I don't know that they will, but he's saying that it's going to be all practical effects. Now, here's a closer look at that AI-generated version of the Snyderverse characters, and this is Superman. If anybody has high-res photos of the other characters, I would like those. I might put those on a T-shirt. Actually create some T-shirts where I might put these on there for me to wear out in public. Now, this goes back. This is Christopher Nolan talking about The Dark Knight Rises, and specifically the end when when Robin finds the Batcave. And it says, Christopher Nolan got the idea for the ending of The Dark Knight Rises from one of his dreams. I first dreamed the end of the Dark Knight trilogy, the idea of somebody taking over Batman and being in the Batcave. Film has a relationship to our dreams that's difficult to articulate, but there's an extrapolation of your existence working things out through your dreams. You are hoping to make connections and find things that are hidden from you while you're living your life or being in the world. I think that's what films do for us. They are very dreamlike experiences. That's pretty cool. I've had a lot of good ideas from dreaming and waking up and actually having some pretty cool things come out of sleeping. So I know exactly where he's coming from with this statement. It's pretty cool. Now, this goes back to May 5th and something David Zaslav said. And this is where I'm going to talk about Warner Brothers. I still have some more DC photos to show you, but I want to talk about how bad Warner Brothers, what kind of shape they're in. David Zaslav says, we have lost a lot of money, but now it's time to rebuild Warner Brothers. DC is going to be a very big growth driver for this company. The Warner Brothers Discovery CEO says, we are very bullish on DC. Yeah, how has that worked out with these last few releases? Now, we're going to look at something about Aquaman. Aquaman is actually going to outdo Black Adam, and I'm going to talk about my thoughts on that and what this shows you about the DCEU. Also know that Warner Brothers for the last quarter lost, I think, $471 million. So everyone talks about this plan that they're trying to repay slowly, which would take like 16 years to pay back, that they actually had a deficit of $471 million this last quarter. So they are not managing their money well. The investors are getting very irritated at this stage. So here's that Aquaman news. $400+ million is now locked for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom's box office after passing The Flash's box office and grossing over $300 million worldwide. It will outgross Black Adam and will be the biggest DCU box office pull since 2018's Aquaman. The film was barely marketed. So let's talk about this here. This is interesting. This is the one movie out of all the films that got released that I was like, I don't know what it's really going to do, because the first film was wildly successful. It was. They made that character serious again. I really enjoyed the first Aquaman. Some people don't like it. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. And I didn't know what this was actually going to do, but I saw the writing on the wall when James Gunn has never said a word about this film, did not promote it, did not talk about it, didn't do anything. And for him to come out on social media and say a good word about something like this doesn't cost Warner Brothers anything. But you can see that he stayed away from that. And Peter Safran doesn't say anything. Warner Brothers completely walked away from this movie because they wanted it to fail. Now, what's funny is the 3 previous films that did have James Gunn's backing all failed. All of them. He even came out and said that The Flash was one of the best superhero films that has ever been made. It bombed. He talked about Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle is the worst bomb out of all of them. Shazam, he talked all of those movies up, and they failed. But the one movie he doesn't talk about, people actually go to. And this goes back to what I said before. People started to come back with Black Adam. The audience was back, and they came back. Black Adam was the biggest selling DCU film since Aquaman. All the films in between Aquaman and that film tanked for various reasons. The biggest being nobody wanted to go see those films. They just didn't. But people started to come back with Black Adam. And that's when Warner Brothers, again, pulled the rug out from underneath everything because it didn't get as much money as they were hoping for. And it didn't even get a release in China, which Aquaman 3 did, or Aquaman 2 did. And that's when they pulled the rug out and destroyed everything. And so the film suffered. But some people came back for Aquaman. Some people couldn't help it. It was part of the DCEU. But to me, this version of this character was the Aquaman that we saw at the end of The Flash. It wasn't the same Aquaman that we saw in the first film. This character was nothing other than a jokester, cracking jokes the whole entire film. He wasn't taking his role seriously. He at least took his role seriously in the first Aquaman. Just go watch the opening sequence. There wasn't a whole lot like that in this film. It was nothing but joke after joke after joke after joke. The fact is, people were interested in the DCU. They're not interested in what Peter Safran was cooking up with all those other films. They weren't interested in what Hamada was doing after Aquaman. They wanted what we were originally looking forward to. They came back for Black Adam, and they came back for this. That tells you something. So some Fandom Wire picked up on this, but it says David Ayer confirms he is still into James Gunn's DCEU after Warner Brothers openly humiliated him with Suicide Squad director's cut. David Ayer's loyalty as a DC fan will continue despite Suicide Squad Ayer cut being rejected by Warner Brothers and the DC franchise. It's not Warner Brothers and the DC franchise. The DC franchise didn't reject it. Warner Brothers specifically did. They stabbed David Ayer in the back, and he deserves to have his film released. This goes back to what I mentioned before. This is pretty funny. Now, this is Joe Blow, I believe, is a satire, but it says, fans wonder if David Corenswet can fly after James Gunn misspeaks on Superman Legacy's practical effects. I thought that was pretty funny. It's just the comedy that's coming out of this film so far, and it hasn't even started filming yet. So as you guys know, James Gunn is over halfway writing Peacemaker Season 2, which I think should be scrapped along everything else. And somebody asked, won't it be confusing having a Season 2 of a different universe? Why not just have it be a new show? And he's talking about Peacemaker because the universe was erased. He said, because it's my favorite thing to do. It's the biggest original Max show ever, and I have a way in. It won't be confusing. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how he explains this when that film comes out. It's again, this is all about James Gunn. If you notice, every single project that has been announced and is moving forward with writing, with casting and everything are the things that he has written and he is directing. He wrote and directed Creature Commandos. He's writing and directing Superman Legacy. He's going to be writing and sometimes directing Peacemaker Season 2. Guys, this is nothing other than the Gunn show. They talk about all these other creatives being involved, but they have not announced or moved forward with any of the other projects with the other creatives involved. They want to get these first things out. I can all but guarantee that these will be the first 3 projects that we see under Warner Brothers Discovery for this DCU. So this is all on Gunn. And if things don't go well, it's not going to be good for the DC universe. Now, you could put this under rumor. I could not find anything that backs this up, but it says a Plastic Man film is reportedly in the works at DC Studios. And I wouldn't doubt it. Here's another very cool AI shot of Batman. Again, I will share these things as I find them, and I think they're pretty cool. This is another cool shot. So I love some of this AI art that is getting released. It's pretty cool. All right, the last photo I have for you here before I talk about what Warner Brothers did with this movie, that 2024 marks the 85th anniversary of the Batman's debut in DC comic books. For the next 85 days, History of the Batman will provide a Bat fact per day about the Dark Knight and his favorite universe across all DC media. So, History of Batman. I may have to follow this account, Batman 85, and they have a picture here of a bunch of different iterations of Batman through those 85 years. It's pretty cool. My favorite DC character by far. All right, guys, I know this is a long video, but there was a lot to go over. And let's talk about the Golden Globes last night. So obviously, they created a whole new category for Barbie yesterday, just so it could win an award. Because it definitely wasn't Best Picture of the year. It just does. It wasn't, and I will never see it. I already know what the movie's about, and I have no desire to ever partake in that film at all. Period. I just don't. I can only envision if a man had made a movie about women the same way, just how crazy the media would go after those individuals. So I'm not going to partake in those types of messages. All right, I'm just not going to. But they had to create a whole cinematic award, and it won the cinematic award. So the entire group of people who did Barbie, some of the directors and producers, went up on stage, and Margot Robbie was the one that talked for everybody. And she basically admitted right there out in public, in front of everybody, that Warner Brothers made up numbers, flat out made up numbers in an effort to get that movie made. Meaning, they made up numbers to lie to the investors to get that movie made. That they cooked up numbers in their favor so they would get backing on that movie so it could be made. And if people don't know how movies are made, The investors back these films. So the studios go in with a pitch, and then investors decide whether or not they want to pay for those movies. So it's not the studios that foot the bill for the films. It's actually these investors, and they want their money back. She is admitting that they went into these meetings making up fake numbers in an effort to get the movie made. If I was an investor right now with Warner Brothers, I would be running in the other direction. That you can't do that in business. That should actually be investigated. It really should. And I can't believe she said that right out there, right out in the open, in public, on live TV. Like, holy freaking crap. Now, the good news is we want to talk about a director who's worked with DC in the past. You want to talk about Christopher Nolan. He won Best Picture. There was that show won like that movie Oppenheimer won like 6 awards last night, and I will be talking about that in my movie and TV show update, which I do hope to get up later today, and that could be a big one too. So I appreciate all the support. Sorry for this super long DC update, but there was a lot to cover today. What do you guys think about all this stuff that's going on? It's kind of just it's a circus right now. Warner Brothers is bleeding money. They're still sinking. And I just don't know how they're going to stay afloat with everything that's going on. All right, guys, I will be back with more updates throughout the week. I do appreciate the support. We will see you on the next video.